Hello, everybody. It is me, Jurassic Master, here to say that today we are watching the newest episode of Making of the Dinosauria episode. You're probably wondering, why am I recording this by myself? Aren't you supposed to be joining everyone else? I am. But the thing is, where everyone else is still setting up. Mainly Cool is still setting up because you know him. Uh, but I was like, hey, let's just pre-record it now, and so yeah, I'm making my. Oh, are they talking? They're talking. I can't even hear them. You guys can hear them, but I can't hear them apparently. But yeah, why can't I hear them? That's weird. Anyways, maybe they don't say anything to me. But yeah, I'm just wanted to say. Here's my intro. I'm doing my intro now. And here's my outro. Wow, what a good episode. Man, I really enjoyed watching that episode, especially when the part when he did the thing on top of the thing and the other thing happened. Wow, that was pretty epic. Can't lie. That was so cool. 10 out of 10. I would do it again. Highly recommend. Phone a friend. I don't know. But anyways, hope you guys enjoyed the video.
Hello, my name is David, and in this video I'll be covering how
David!
I created Monsters Down Under, the 8th film in my Dinosauria animated series. I'll be going over everything, the science behind the film, my concept art,
Okay.
my 3D model, rig and animate these prehistoric animals, and even go over how I created this big clay Kronosaurus sculpture I made for the film as well.
Cat!
These short films may be the final result, but there is
I want to eat it, Kula said.
research and artwork that goes into each and every one of these projects.
Oh god. I got so many comments
Let's get started.
in my reaction of people telling me names I didn't recognize. Including the fucking isopod looking thing.
What were they?
I don't remember the name, but I know someone left a comment on it. And if anyone leaves a comment on this video, I will find you.
When I started work on Dinosauria,
I will find you
set out to
and
make
hunt you down.
5 new films.
Alright,
I
let's
needed
do this.
5 new ideas.
Yeah.
Purple Lizards and Honey by Moonlight, as well as the upcoming Fighting Dinosaurs and Two Titans, all solidified themselves pretty quickly on this list. But the obligatory Ocean episode I wanted to make, episode 3, took me the longest to really nail down.
Yeah, I remember.
The Ocean episode of Dinosauria Volume 1 was Sea and Sky. And
I remember this particular short film being a pain for him to animate.
It's a bad film, it's just the shortest and the least impressive. It was also very technically challenging, and I struggled a lot when it came to rigging and puppeteering the pterosaurs, as well as animating the sea. One of my main goals for Volume 2's Ocean
It's always the ocean.
was to tackle the sea again and do it better.
I'd say he did a pretty good job, all things considered. What the?
First
Oh,
serious
oh,
idea I had for
Hesperornis.
episode 3 was going to be called Hell's Aquarium.
That's actually a pretty nice looking Hesperornis.
This film would have
Yeah.
taken place in the Western Interior Seaway, but this time follow a young Hesperornis on his first dive.
Ooh, like penguins.
I even got as far as creating character models for this film and doing some test animation.
And this was cancelled.
January
However, I
2023.
very quickly realised that I'd much rather explore new places in Dinosauria Volume 2 than return to old ones.
Fair enough.
The second serious contender for the obligatory
Yeah, he has an amazing
was a
eye
manga
for
called
creature design.
Fire and Water, which was going to tell the story of the famous Borrelia pelta fossil.
Oh, that fossil!
This,
Oh!
frankly beautiful ankylosaur specimen was found in a marine deposit, and the film was going to tell a potential story of how this animal lived, how it died, and how it ended up buried at the bottom of the sea.
I would
Oh,
have
wish
seen
you
that.
did it.
Yeah, that would have been cool.
Fire and Water was also scrapped, partly because
Me
it was
too.
technically ambitious.
I envy his drawing as well,
it was going
Kula.
to be, but mainly because I couldn't confidently depict any pterosaurs in this setting, and I really wanted to animate another big pterosaur.
Oh.
I don't remember exactly what first drew me to Australia for the final film. I think I was just reading about
It's in
Mesozoic
Australia.
formations that include both
Yeah, the big
terrestrial and
frig-
marine life,
frigate bird like
which
pouch.
stumbling upon
Yeah.
the Tullabuck Formation in Queensland. And it was a far more alien and bizarre place than I expected.
Pretty.
Brr.
You see, modern Australia is hot and dry, but during the early Cretaceous, the continent was still attached to Antarctica, so it was instead very wet and cold for Mesozoic standards.
Okay.
It was a weird place, with a giant inland sea covering a lot of the landmass, full of animals that, to me, feel just a little too ancient for the time period, with pliosaurs and ichthyosaurs feeling a whole lot more like the last echoes of the Jurassic.
Oh,
over what
I can't read
associate
that.
with the Cretaceous.
Don't hurt yourself. I'm sure he'll pronounce the name out loud later.
I got so interested in this world that I had decided that my main goal at this point for this film was to just take the viewer to this place that was totally taking over my imagination. I wanted the film to be an eerie
Squid.
journey through this totally
We
otherworldly
It's Squidward.
environment, almost as if the film was exploring a different planet. A beautiful place full of amazing things, but unknowable, ancient, and alien things.
Also, I was not the only one who commented on the fact there was a cloaca on the Chronosaurus model.
There's
Neat.
an amount of uncertainty, of individual interpretation to all
Hey,
of my
it's all fun.
Dinosauria films, an amount of ambiguity to the
Our Frozen Past,
motivation of the characters.
one of my favorites.
These characters don't speak. There's no narration. They're not.
Yeah, no,
people,
that
they're-
one's my favorite
they're
out of
animals.
the
I
first
think
batch.
this ambiguity is a huge strength.
My
of the
favorite.
series, and
Right here.
Monsters Down Under,
I wonder why.
really wanted to double down.
It's not just because T-Rex is in it.
Mysterious, ambiguous storytelling. I wanted all of the creatures above ground, the dinosaurs, to be pretty easy to read, so I based their behaviors more so on mammals. Things like dogs
Okay.
and cows, animals that human beings find pretty easy to relate to and understand.
That would explain the stretching.
This was to contrast everything in the sea, that I instead wanted to feel like totally unknowable, ancient eldritch beings.
Bula
Ah,
says,
nice.
interesting.
I wanted this film to feel alien. It's full of strange interactions between strange creatures. Even
Yeah.
the main plot, the most structured part of this film, this very long and very violent interaction between these two Chronosaurus, is never totally explained to the viewer.
Okay.
Yeah, I kind of like that.
I didn't want people to totally understand what these animals were doing. But what they're doing isn't random either. It's not without reason. Their actions are very natural and very purposeful. I personally love watching animals do weird animal stuff. Stuff that doesn't make sense. And attempting
Weird
to
animal
understand
stuff.
their world.
Yeah.
Totally alien perspectives.
That's what I liked about Prehistoric Planet.
Quite knowing what you're seeing,
Yeah.
but being infatuated is the exact feeling of like natural world mystery and fascination that I wanted to capture with this film. Which I'm about to totally happened during that Chronosaurus scene. The reality of what happens between
Alright.
these two animals
Oh,
is
we'll
that
find out.
a younger male enters the territory of a larger and older female.
Alright.
Kills a plesiosaur to both get her attention and to present it to her as a gift, and attempts to court her with deep, bellowing calls.
Go back, I missed something.
He's unscarred, so she isn't convinced. The
Alright.
pair then surface, take a deep breath, and wait. This is a speculative, ritualized
When you're laughing at something.
dance, or
Okay.
courtship challenge, more like.
They were talking about how he's gonna tell what exactly happened.
How long he can remain submerged while she stares him down.
So it was like a test.
An hour passes.
Yeah,
and
that's
the
that was
inexperienced,
theorizing.
Unscarred male keeps bellowing, running out of air too quickly,
But
and forced to resurface.
not a test of strength.
Scarred female, being a big, angry, predatory sea monster, sees this as a moment of weakness and can't help but violently attack him.
Okay,
Yep, weakness.
that makes sense.
However, he doesn't give up. Attempting to prove his strength once again, bleeding and bruised,
Yeah, it's
the pair take another
it's about
breath.
strength.
The female, at this point, with blood in the water, becomes very restless, and unfortunately, the male barely lasts a few minutes this time due to his injuries. He makes another break for the surface, she attacks him once again, and he passes out.
I just straight up thought he died.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The female now thinks it's
We all
over,
did.
she's dealt with the intruder. But after sinking to the bottom of the sea,
No, you gotta put
miraculously
faith
gets a
in.
second wind,
Put faith in, bro.
springs to life, and races for the surface.
I had faith in him.
Reaching, inhaling, and crashing back down into the sea, he bellows once again. No longer unscarred, he has finally proved his strength, and the female joins him in song.
Typically, I would criticize that mammal-like behavior, but here I can accept and respect it. Yeah, I feel like it was
The
all right
female
here.
jumps ahead to springtime, perhaps
Yeah.
a year, 2 years later, and the female gives birth to a new calf. A calf that shares the young male's colors.
Yeah,
Oh,
I noticed it because like the green patch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The sculpture.
Sculptures!
Made large
Yay!
clay sculptures
Let-
for
let
each and
bro
every
cook,
single
let's
one
see
of
what
my
he does.
Dinosauria films. And for Monsters Down Under, I of course decided to
Damn,
sculpt a
bro.
Chronosaurus. I started the sculpture with a piece of
Dope as
aluminium
fuck.
wire, which I wrapped in paper, and then wrapped in
I love how he
foam, and then
incorporates
wrapped
such
in
small
clay.
details. I agree.
In addition to
Yes.
this big ugly slug, I also
Yeah.
Ugly
found
slug.
more flippery shapes and rolled out what would eventually become the tail and the head.
It looks really nice.
I then waited for all of these pieces to dry and embedded them all
why does it look like
head
potato?
into the main body of the piece.
It kind of does look like a misshapen potato.
I use air drying clay
Even cool is like, I want to eat it.
sculptures, but I've also gotten into the habit of using Milliput to strengthen.
Now I wanna eat it
the
more, he
materials of my
says.
Models. Milliput is just a whole lot more durable, so I use it for small
Oh,
parts. or
Milliput,
sticky
that's what
heavy
Marco
parts,
uses.
Things like the flippers,
Yeah.
which would otherwise be prone to snagging on things and breaking. I sculpted the head completely separately because it's the focal point and therefore requires the most attention. The teeth were a challenge. I must have resculpted the teeth on this model like 5 or 6 times before I was finally satisfied. Eventually, I decided to just sculpt the teeth separately in Milliput and push them into the wet Daz clay to create this final snaggle-toothed look.
I mean, it looks nice,
I
yeah.
attached this sculpture to its base very early on.
Oh,
so
that's-
this gave
it
me
needs
a
more neck.
convenient handle to hold on to
There you
while
go.
I worked on it. However,
Look fang looking.
this piece out, the more clay I layered on to form the final shape, the more front heavy it got. And
Oh,
I finally attached the head, the whole piece fell forward.
yeah, that's a
Oh
problem.
no!
I was forced to saw the original base off, drill a new hole into the sculpture at an angle that would better support its weight, and completely remounted it.
That works.
At this point, I was
Yay!
happy with the general shape of the Chronosaurus and started the final layer of detail work. To do this, I flattened out thin layers of Daz air drying clay,
He's got web fingers.
that clay around the model, and began carving the final skin details into this wet canvas. These animals would have
I like
had
the stuff he
scales,
uses
but
for the
these
skin.
scales would have been very fine and impossible to see at the scale my model is at. A smooth-skinned Chronosaurus is not a fun Chronosaurus to sculpt, though, so I decided to exaggerate the skin details a little with scales and wrinkles and folds where you'd expect to see them.
And say it with me, folks. He sculpted a cloaca.
I was happy with the sculpt. I primed the piece,
Because fuck you, meerkat.
and I sang
God damn it.
the piece.
Oh my god.
He's going crazy!
I fucking love this guy.
This sculpture
Yeah,
came
he's
together
amazing.
incredibly quickly. It was one of the easiest pieces
Cat!
of the
Cat!
series so far. This was for many reasons. This is a comparatively simple body form with no claws or hands or feet. None of this animal really has to look like it's bearing any weight, like how a terrestrial animal would, so that wasn't a concern. But most importantly, this whole piece is floating, and the pose is super open.
Don't make that joke, Kula.
The way
One of these days, he's gonna drop the sculpture in these gags.
Easier since the sculpture has
I
its
hope
own
not.
handle that I
Please don't.
grab and turn and manipulate without fear of ruining my work.
Especially because this piece looks really good.
Love this sculpture.
I don't want
I
him
think
to
it's one of my
drop it.
best
It would
in
be
a
so
while.
bad.
It just looks alive. It looks marine. It looks like a lizard. It looks like a crocodile.
Holy shit, it does have a Cloacula head.
In fact, this piece is heavily based on another sculpture I made many, many years ago of a humpback whale and her calf.
Oh,
Ooh.
look at that whale.
Are in very similar poses and I think look very cool next to each other.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Here's my new Kronosaurus sculpture next to my Megalosaurus and my Scutellosaurus.
I honestly don't know what's my favorite sculpture so far.
Here it is next to the
Yeah.
rest of the Dinosauria sculpture family.
Grandma me be like, because like they all look really good. I don't know if I have a favorite among them.
Yeah, I cannot have a favorite. They look all good.
They all look really good. All right,
Featured
featured
species.
species.
Finally!
All right.
Kronosaurus queenslandicus was a pliosaur and is the star species of this film. It lived in Australia 100 to 120 million years ago, with size estimates between 9 and 11 meters in length, making it easily one of the biggest pliosaurs to ever exist.
So just short of 40 feet long.
My Kronosaurus design is heavily counter-shaded, with very dark tones on top and very light tones underneath.
I still like the
This is
like
a
green
very
blush on the throat.
trend in pliosaur
Hmm.
whaley
Yeah.
art, and for very good reason. Not just because of Walking with Dinosaurs, these are just the most realistic colours for this animal.
He acknowledged it.
Most
Yeah.
marine animals today, especially big predatory ones like sharks and dolphins, orcas, many whales, have stark, dark light countershading just like this. However, there's both a male
That's so
and a female
realistic.
in this film, and I needed them to have distinct designs so the viewer could easily tell them apart. The male is younger and more colourful, with blue teal accents, and the female is older, duller, more scarred, and has white, orca-like eye spots.
Which is a nice touch.
Yeah.
I initially toyed with the idea of making one of these animals albino to make them easier to differentiate, but ultimately decided to save that idea for a later film in the series.
Wait, this Sora Poseidon is albino?
Oh yeah, look at the eye.
In
Okay, I'm invested.
I depict Kronosaurus as a solitary and hyper-aggressive.
Yeah, that's really cool.
And we do have evidence of intraspecific aggression in this species, potentially even cannibalism, with a subadult Kronosaurus skull preserving what look to be bite marks from a larger individual.
So there was a reason for this.
They have multiple specimens showing this, but it's fitting
Like
for a
it.
creature named after the Greek titan Kronos, who devoured their children.
Oh, cover your ears, little baby.
The Kronosaurus is also depicted giving live birth in the film. I don't actually know if we have any direct evidence of this in pliosaurs specifically, but live birth is an incredibly common adaptation for marine tetrapods. Amnio eggs just don't survive
Yeah.
underwater, and Kronosaurus was definitely not hauling itself onto land like a sea turtle to lay its eggs.
Yeah, it's way too fucking big.
Yeah.
It would die
It
trying to get onto
survive.
land.
Kronosaurus is also shown exhibiting at least some parental care in the film. I don't know exactly how reasonable this is, but it is believed that plesiosaurs gave birth to very few, very large babies, like, say, whales, rather than tons and tons of little babies, like, again, say, sea turtles. And most animals today that pour a ton of resources into one big baby tend to take care of that baby for at least a little while.
Okay, you know what? I was wondering about that. I'm glad I got some clarification. Now it makes sense.
Sound effects
Yeah, it does.
in Monsters Down Under do have alligator hisses and elephant grumbles in them, but like virtually every single animal in this whole series, the majority of this creature's voice is my voice, just slowed down, pitch shifted, and combined with other sounds.
I think I know which ones it is.
Short breakdown of how I created some of these sound effects.
Right, so that's him just like splashing water. Oh. How do you make that noise? I love sound design, especially making it.
The grunts, the snorts, and the
Yeah.
coughs. I think 95% of the Kronosaurus vocals in this film are based on my voice, including the courtship bellowing.
That's what my grandma said when she
It sounds like a snore.
Oh! That was literally my grandma snoring, the first one. That's really good.
Marine reptiles, the second animal I'll be covering in this video is the plesiosaur Eromangosaurus.
Okay, we have a name.
An elasmosauroid who tend to have very long, very skinny necks. I decided to shorten the neck in my reconstruction and fatten the animal up a little.
Eromangosaurus. That's a new
I
one.
did this because
To me.
they seem like reasonable adaptations for an animal living in a cooler sea
Eromanga.
than most other elasmosaurs. We have found evidence of blubber on other plesiosaurs.
Ooh!
I feel this body
Huh.
form is more than reasonable.
I did not know that.
Plesiosaurs couldn't chew, so like many dinosaurs, they swallowed stones called gastroliths to help grind up food in their stomachs.
I noticed that detail.
It's
Yeah,
been suggested
I thought that was really
this
cool.
extra weight could have also helped these animals submerge themselves. And this
That's
little
on our
idea
list.
inspired one of my favourite moments in this film, in which the male Kronosaurus rips into the gut of the Eromangosaurus specifically to spill the gastroliths.
Yeah, I like that scene. That's like
Oh,
a
yeah,
really good
really cool.
detail.
Extra weight.
Yeah, it's
floats
nice
to the
detail.
surface so he can begin his display. Completing the marine reptile trio, the third animal I'll be discussing in this video is the Ichthyosaur Platypterygius.
Platypterygius.
australis, specifically, the species from Australia.
Okay, now we have a name and a
Those
pronunciation.
are some of my favorite extinct animals. I just love how weird and stupid they are. Never has a tetrapod re-achieved fish as well as the ichthyosaurs did.
Embrace fish.
Particularly obvious in the film, but I did create 3 different variants of the species. Perhaps this range of colours is sexual dimorphism, perhaps ontogenetic change, with the older individuals being the more colourful ones. I never really decided.
That's a big fucking fish.
Platypterygius
A
was
big one.
unfortunately
fish?
quite a late addition to
No.
the film, which is
It
why
is a
it
big
doesn't
It's a reptile.
much. It wasn't in the original
Yeah, I was
script,
like, it's a
just
reptile,
really
why would it be a
wanted an
fish?
excuse
I was making the joke because it looks like a
to
fish.
animate an ichthyosaur, and this was the only place I could put one.
Alright, pterosaur. Here we go.
The next animal I want to talk about is the pterosaur Halaskia.
Halaskia.
One that I really,
Ooh.
really wanted to get right.
Don't actually me.
One of my main goals for Monsters Down Under was to tackle the same technical challenges I struggled with back when I created Sea and Sky. And by far the biggest challenge working on that film was rigging and animating the pterosaurs.
Yeah, I remember that being a real pain.
I wanted to try again, improve my skills, and do better.
Which
All
he
in all, I
did.
definitely
These-
improved.
these
This
look really
Halaskia
good.
in the film has been totally reworked. It's hard to display
Yeah,
on screen, really.
Those.
But this is an all new skeleton, it's an all new mesh, it's an all new rig, and it flies, walks, and folds up far better than my Geo Sternbergia did. Fly with me, my brother, and away.
What the
What the hell was that?
I do still wish that I could fold the wings further than this, though.
He's even like, what the
Closer
fuck?
to this.
Gmod S level animation.
But at the moment, folding the wings this much on this rig leads to far too many clipping.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh.
Something I will improve upon for my next pterosaur.
Ooh.
Halaskia is an anhanguerid pterosaur, which was only recently described in
Okay.
2024.
Why
Oh.
having
The
those bump?
most complete pterosaur ever found in Australia, which was the main reason I chose this species.
Probably female.
It's only 22% complete, but that 22%
Or
crucially contains skull
juvenile.
material which is diagnostic. Premax teeth 4 and 5 are smaller than 3 and 6 in this fossil, which is, as far as I know, unique to this genus. It's kind of hard to tell though in the film because the main Halaskia has 2 teeth missing. While working on this film, I was actually contacted by Rory Duncan, a co-author on that paper, which then led to the lead author, Adele Pentland, getting into contact with me as well. So
Hey.
super special shout out and thank you to Rory, to Adele, to Zev, to Christina, and all the other people at Chronosaurus Corner. Like, you guys are great. And I hope I did your big, ugly, flappy guy proud?
Ah! Hacker, it can't be a juvenile. It's the same size as the adult male.
Was
The
it?
first actual
Yeah.
dinosaur I'll be talking about in this video is Muttaburrasaurus.
Hey!
A large, herbivorous
My boy.
iguanodont, and one of Australia's most famous
Yeah, but it
dinosaurs.
had no bump.
Yeah,
It could be.
My design
Female.
for this animal. It might actually be one of my favorite designs of Volume 2, with the reverse counter shading, the blue highlights, and the flapper flappy neck flaps that flap away when it roars. You'll almost
Flap.
always see this animal depicted with a big trumpeting nose. Muttaburrasaurus does have a really big nose, and there's definitely something going on in that region of the skull. But these big inflatable honking structures you always see associated with the species are completely speculative.
it's safe
I
though.
personally find it very hard
Yeah.
to imagine this animal without them though, which is why I did it too.
I think it's very reasonable to think.
The juvenile
That-
Muttaburrasaurus doesn't quite have these structures yet, and he isn't very good at honking.
You know, would love to see these in the Jurassic
Some
movie
time has passed, the blue coloration has started to appear.
or any dinosaur movie.
Oh yeah, we caught that detail.
Mhm.
Coonbarosaurus.
Small ankylosaur or para-ankylosaur.
What was the
What's
detail?
Face,
what's
look at
going
him.
on with these animals?
At the end of the
Pretty
episode, the little one had
Ankylosaurus
blue on
was
his
a basal
nose.
ankylosaurian dinosaur and Australia's most complete and best preserved dinosaur.
So it wasn't Minmi.
Little guy is known from most of a skeleton in articulation, including a decent amount of the skin and the osteoderms. It's a really beautiful fossil.
It looks amazing.
This charming little fellow was a little bit frustrating to research. This is because when this beautiful, nearly complete fossil was first described in 1996, it was actually thought to be another species of the far more famous Australian ankylosaur, Minmi.
Oh,
This was until 2015, when the
Nice.
specimen was reclassified as its own distinct genus and named Coonbarosaurus.
okay.
But because this animal was Minmi for so long, all depictions of Minmi you've probably ever seen have actually been Coonbarosaurus.
You all lied.
The bit of Minmi material is actually super sparse, so when Minmi is reconstructed even to this day, it is drawing far more from Coonbarosaurus than itself. Which is a bit of a shame, because I think this little guy deserves more credit.
Yeah. Justice for Coonbarosaurus.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
With all of the major characters out of the way, it's now time to talk about the weird and wacky critters of Monsters Down Under.
Alright, let's get some
The
answers.
first of these critters I'll be talking about is the small dinosaur called Nanantius. And I'll be honest with you guys, this is probably not a very good reconstruction of this animal, but it's kind of hard to tell. Nanantius is super fragmentary.
Ooh.
It's a Cretaceous bird, essentially, but it's only really known from a shin bone and some neck vertebrae. And because it's so badly known, my Nanantius is admittedly just a re-edited and retextured version of Birdicus Madeupicus from The Last Tyrant.
I mean, it still looks good.
The
Yeah.
next critter featured in the film is Pachyrhizidus, a ray-finned fish. This is supposed to be the species Marathonensis, specifically, but I couldn't find any confident figures or photos of those fossils, so instead based it more on Pachyrhizidus caneus and Groy, which have far easier to find figures.
Groy.
However, I did find a pretty cool paper about a fossil specimen of this fish from the Tullabuck Formation found infested with over 130 scavenging isopods,
Oh.
which caught my attention so much that I directly referenced it in the film.
And it's still disgusting.
These little
Yummy.
guys are Brondiga, I think, which I have almost certainly reconstructed to.
Doesn't know how to pronounce them.
I think these guys would have been actually, like, super tiny. The fourth critter I wanted to briefly mention is perhaps a surprising one. This seashell.
Oh.
As things can be seen
Oh.
throughout the film, the young Muttaburrasaurus picks one of these shells up. The shells are scattered all across the beach during the very first shot of the film and make one final appearance during the very last shot of the film. These are a species of Inoceremus, a Mesozoic bivalve, which are so abundant in the Tulabuck Formation and kept being mentioned when I was researching it that I felt I needed to reference them in the film somehow.
I mean,
Eventually, I decided to literally bookend Monsters Down Under with these animals.
sure, why not?
The second to last critter I want to mention are these ammonites. They're not really based on any particular species because I couldn't really find any definitive Tulabuck Formation ammonite fossils to base them on. But I have no doubt that they were there. Ammonites have been found in Australia. Ammonites were
Cooler.
everywhere.
Yep, I
Animals
agree as
deserve
well.
some spotlight, even those. Yeah,
The final
Yeah.
and the coolest critter featured in the film is Enkatuthus.
Enkatuthus.
Wiggly woggly.
Wiggly woggly. Why?
I decided to include this species to add to the upsetting and alien vibes of Monsters Down Under, but before working on this film, I knew almost nothing about Wiggly Wogglies.
Why?
One of these creatures to life, as well as the ammonite, in detail to 3D model, rig, and animate these creatures, I had to learn at least the basics of how cephalopods like these work. How they're built, how they move, which parts are squishy, which parts shouldn't be squishy, which was honestly a whole lot of fun. Like, I will take any excuse to learn about new, weird, and wacky animals. And without this research, I wouldn't have any idea what a cephalopod's siphon is, which these guys use in the film to jet propel themselves away when
Okay.
they see Kronosaurus above.
Bruh.
Before I move on to the next
Oh!
segment, I wanted to announce that I'll be speaking again at DinoCon this year. I'll be doing a big presentation, and I'll also be showing off a
There are a couple more dinosaurs in this shot.
film. I am having so much fun working on Dinosauria Volume 2 that I decided to extend the series from 5 films to 6.
Is this...
Oh, nice.
I want to guess this might be Bambi Raptor or something. I know this guy. That's Ionosaurus.
I want a figure of that. With
Look at that
this
horn.
color.
DinoCon
Wow.
2026 will be held in
Mhm.
England at the
Yes,
Hilton
Pluto?
Birmingham Metropole Hotel
Maybe.
on July 25th and 26th.
And that
More information and where to buy tickets at the website on screen.
must be Maiasaura.
I loved meeting a bunch of you guys last year, and don't
Yeah,
worry if you can't make it to the event and still want to see this new film.
That is a
The film will
gorgeous
be uploaded
looking
publicly here on YouTube,
Despletosaurus.
just like the rest of the Dinosauria series, sometime down the road.
It must be a remodel, considering we already have Despletosaurus.
I know, but that color goes hard
My
as fuck.
animation style
I know.
is a mix of 2D and 3D animated elements. In the simplest terms, all of the characters are 3D.
It sounds like the god from his
the
Dinosauria
environments
series.
two-dimensional. In this making of video, I thought it'd be interesting to really go step by step through my.
Oh, there was a third.
for Exactly how I create these characters and worlds.
There's just 2 of them.
I do all of my 3D animation in Blender, and every single character, be it a dinosaur, a pterosaur, a pliosaur, or a wiggly woggly, starts
Hey.
with a default Blender cube. With this cube, I then subdivide, extrude, and stitch together the basic form of the animal. I
It would
use
be
these
funny if
sketches
he-
on figures of the fossils, with gaps filled in by related species, but honestly, I kinda do most of this by eye. If the shape looks right, it looks right. I don't think I've ever directly followed somebody else's reconstruction. Ever. For example, there's a very large and very cool and very famous skeletal mount of Kronosaurus in Harvard, but that thing is also infamous for being mostly made of plaster and has far too many vertebrae, and its anatomy and proportions are just way off. So I reconstructed my animal shorter, with a comparatively larger head, longer flippers. Honestly, my Kronosaurus looks a whole lot more like this PNSO model. But again,
Oh.
not exactly. For one thing, I'm really just not convinced of this horizontal tail fluke.
Oh dear.
Gave mine a vertical one.
You know, that's definitely a lesson that a lot of artists should learn.
Process of
Mhm.
researching, educated guessing, going with whatever looks most natural is how I create all of the creatures you see in my films.
Trust your instincts. I agree, Kula.
Yeah,
be open.
definitely.
I agree.
My animation models are actually very simple 3D models. And that's because for my 2D, 3D animation style to work, the simpler these models are, the better. I sort of need to treat these 3D meshes like simple blank canvases for the more detailed texture work. I paint these textures onto my models like I would paint a sculpture, in layers, paying special attention to focal points like the head, the hands, and the feet, areas that will likely be seen in close-up at some point during the film.
Tell you what, if we got a dinosaur game like this,
All of the little anatomical details are created. The
I know, right?
The shadows, the feathers,
I want a
the
game like
scales.
this.
like this style would look awesome.
Ends there,
Yeah.
though. I think every single dinosaur I've ever made has gone through texture tweaks over the course of a film's production. These changes can just be aesthetic things, like the face of my Kunbarasaurus, which I slightly redesigned halfway through this project. But more often than not, these changes are for storytelling
It was very
and
subtle.
accuracy reasons. My Kronosaurus, for example, must have gone through 15 different texture variants over the course of
It's
the
pale!
film. Initially, these changes were me trying to distinguish my design more from the Walking with Dinosaurs Leopleurodon, but eventually I also noticed that I put the nostril too far down the snout and
It's a Leopleurodon, Charlie.
I also
Magical Leopleurodon.
wanted different
Yeah.
variants of both the male and the female to help distinguish them from one another. I wanted them to be
I like
easy
this
to
one.
tell apart, with two
Not that one.
distinct personalities, but without being overly stylized. It was a tricky balance, but these two designs you see here were the ones I finally settled upon.
Yeah.
The next step is to rig the models so they can be animated. This doesn't just mean giving the model an armature, a skeleton, so it can move around. It also requires a lot of extra specific and minute controls to make the character look around, blink, breathe, wiggle, and even At this point, the character is basically finished. It's been 3D modeled, textured.
The pale one looks like he's
ready
seen
to
things.
be
I
animated.
agree.
The very first thing I do with every new character I make is animate a walk cycle, or a swim cycle, or a fly cycle, depending on the species.
I feel like that's like textbook for any animator.
This gets me familiar with the animal, familiar with the rig, and helps me form the type of personality this character will eventually have.
Animators take notes.
Stage is definitely
Write that
down, write that down.
gratifying, as it's the moment all of this
Write that down, write that down.
starts to come together.
Meanwhile, sucks at walk cycles.
Fantastic and ancient animals that I love so much finally start to come to life.
Again, can we have a dinosaur game that looks like this, please?
At
I
the
know.
end of the video, he
I will.
announces,
I
I'm
will
making a new
fund that-
dinosaur.
I will
game."
fund that video game. I don't care. I will find a way.
I will actually hire Dead Sound as an artist.
Jeez.
I will-
All the
I will
characters and
die
models
broken
are
happy knowing
three-dimensional.
that this
The
game
environments
exists.
are two-dimensional. So each of these backdrops is its own individual drawing.
Breath of the Wild
I
dinosaur
often
game.
end up drawing hundreds
Oh.
of backdrops per film, and to go over exactly how I do this, I'll be using this shot as an example.
Okay. Break it down for us,
I
David.
actually do draw rudimentary storyboards for my films, which I don't think I've ever mentioned before. And that's because they look like this, and therefore are not worth mentioning. But using this storyboard as a template, the very first thing I do is animate all of the 3D elements in the scene, with a very simple mock-up of the environment.
Never
All of
played
this
Breath of the
is
Wild.
done in
That-
Blender.
Neither have I.
Neither have I.
I've watched gameplay.
I
It's really
zoom
pretty.
out And crop all of the
Yes,
space
but the
that
frames
camera
are
covers
shit.
during this shot, and render out a single frame of this open space, which I then take into Photoshop. Using this simple mock-up as a guide, I sketch out a more detailed version of the finished environment,
Okay.
usually color-coded to help me separate which elements go to which layer, and then meticulously paint it all out.
This has to be so time
Do this
consuming.
in layers, and these layers can usually be separated into foreground and background elements. In this case, the background elements are the sea and these corals, and the foreground elements are these additional corals and the carcass. Specifically for this underwater shot, I also created a couple additional layers of cloudy ocean atmosphere as well. I then render out all of these separate 2D images and bring them back into my original 3-dimensional scene. And when all of these are lined up correctly, the shot finally starts to come together. If needed, I also add extra 2D animated details as well. For this film, these were mostly particle effects like bubbles and snow and splashing water. These can be created anyway in Photoshop or Blender, depending on the effect.
Okay.
I would call this an average backdrop, like a medium difficulty shot. Some backdrops are easier to draw, like this one, which understandably took just minutes. But some backdrops are super complicated, like this one, which took hours and hours and hours to draw.
I need to know
This time and time again, but painting all of these backdrops is easily the most time-consuming part of my filmmaking process. It takes a very, very long time to create these worlds, especially for a film this long. And Monsters Down Under in particular goes to a huge variety of different locations. From the sea to the land to the sky, it's day and night, it's in the snow and in the sun. I am very, very happy with how this film looks though. The mostly desaturated color palette perfectly communicates the cold, alien atmosphere of the film. And even though these were some of the least detailed backdrops I've ever had to draw, I actually especially like this big open sea and the vivid red column of blood that the Chronosaurus dance around.
Yeah. Never. Yeah. I need to know which one of those Kumbarosaurus was animated and which ones were just drawn in.
Monsters Down Under has an original soundtrack created by Ivan Dutch. I told him I wanted the film to be atmospheric and alien, mysterious and dreadful, and the way Ivan took that and ran with it and weaved these unnerving themes into the very storytelling of this film, I think was just incredible.
I agree.
One of my favourite parts about this score is the recurring Chronosaurus theme that plays throughout the film, and how that motif evolves as the story develops. It starts off scary and dreadful as we know very little about these unknowable alien sea monsters. But by the end of the film, this theme has faded into something almost romantic, as we get to understand these animals as animals.
You know, I didn't even catch that. That's an interesting detail.
Ends on the Chronosaurus theme, but this time played beautifully and triumphantly.
Again, I didn't notice.
As these sea monsters are now recontextualized as the complex, powerful, real-life marvels of nature that they truly were.
I still like that baby.
The little baby.
It's a baba.
Baby.
Please do go check out Ivan's work if you haven't already. Links to his website, his Patreon, his whatever else are in the description. And make sure to give him a big thank you from me for his phenomenal work on this series. Like, I cannot emphasize enough how much his music has elevated these films.
Yes, do it very good.
How's
Alright, evaluation. What does he think of his
The
film?
thing that bothers me the most about Monsters Down Under is also one of my favourite things about it, which is all of this snow.
Okay.
Australia was a lot colder in the early Cretaceous than it is today, but I read a lot of conflicting information about just how cold it got. Southern Australia has possible evidence of glaciation, it was within the Antarctic Circle, and would have seen months and months of total darkness during the Antarctic winter, but this film is set in the Tullabuk Formation, which is in northern Australia. It was still cold, but I think was just outside of the Antarctic Circle.
Yeah, that would do it.
yearly temperature estimates I could find for this time and place were cool to temperate with a lot of rain, a place that seasonally would at least reach, if not freezing temperatures, like near freezing temperatures. Not gonna lie, very rainy, very seasonally cold, reminded me a lot of Scotland, where I live, and Scotland does get this cold, which is what inspired me to depict the Tullabuck Formation like this in the first place. However, I haven't once seen a piece of paleoart depicting Kronosaurus next to something,
The guy saying hello.
which is a pretty striking image. So while my research tells me that cold like this would be reasonable, just very rare, I can't help but shake this feeling that I've made a mistake. Regardless of scientific accuracy, though, I honestly wouldn't really change any of this. All of this snow and ice looks fantastic, and it serves the story. It adds to the otherworldly atmosphere of the film, and it immediately tells the viewer how different Australia was during the Cretaceous, while also being based on enough science for me to be okay with it.
Yeah.
There's also less snow and ice in this film than it might seem. It is snowing during this scene with the Muttaburrasaurus, but there's actually no snow or ice anywhere else in this film.
Oh.
The cliffs that the Halaskia are resting on might look like they're covered in ice, but this white stuff was genuinely intended to be pterosaur poo.
Oh, ew.
In a seabird colony, you'll know that the cliffs are absolutely caked in this stuff.
Akula, yummy.
This frozen area
Oh,
here
cool,
is
no.
also technically
Yum, yum.
not seawater.
Ugh.
Not entirely. It's a lake that's connected to the sea through a small channel.
I don't know if I like.
You see the gap that opens
Like
up
vanilla
to the
frosting.
Stop it!
distance. Later, the Kronosaurus even swims through this gap, and once the salt water mixes with the fresh water, the ice disappears, because fresh water freezes at higher temperatures than seawater does.
Okay.
Another thing that doesn't really bother me, but I think might bother some others, is the somewhat cartoony behavior of the baby Muttaburrasaurus, being like too playful or cheeky.
I think that's
and I
fine.
did second guess this a little.
Yeah.
Because it's a baby dinosaur, so
This
like
was done
it's a little he's a little guy.
I wanted all of the
Yeah.
dinosaurs and the pterosaurs, everything above water, to feel like animals that we can understand with behavior that's easy to read.
Okay, so those two were animated.
Whereas the totally unknowable near alien monsters beneath the sea.
Yeah, I felt like that was fine.
Really consider this behavior particularly anthropomorphized either. In fact, this very bespeckled beast served as my main inspiration for all of
Oh, he got a dog?
this behavior.
Dalmatian!
I've had to live with this bespeckled beast for over a year now, and I'm not totally sure what animal it is. I think
What animal it
it's a
is?
small
What?
and ugly horse.
Look at that beast.
It's so
Muttaburra's
cute.
Wonder is one of the biggest and most time-consuming things I've ever made. It was an absolute behemoth of a project. I would estimate that the same amount of work time
The same picture.
this one 16-minute film is about on par with the
Oh,
first
no.
3 episodes of Dinosauria combined. More than half of Dinosauria Volume 1's workload went into just Monsters Down Under. This amount of work would be otherwise near impossible, grueling, miserable for me, for just one guy to do it all on my own, if it weren't counterbalanced by the sheer joy and inspiration I get from making all of this cool dinosaur stuff. This film is as enormous as it is because I loved making it. I anticipate this making of video to be like the longest one I've ever made, like
Yep.
45 minutes to an hour or something. It's gonna be huge, and I could talk about Monsters Down Under for another 5 more hours. Like,
Jesus.
this isn't just my favourite film of the Dinosauria series, it's easily my favourite film I've ever made. It's one of my proudest creations ever.
I respect that.
Yeah, I mean this was really
I
good.
respect it.
It's just exactly my
Absolute
type of film.
masterpiece.
It's
Yeah.
slow, it's atmospheric, it's visual storytelling, brutality and beauty, horror and nature combined. Like, I didn't even get to talk about how this film is mostly desaturated with the vivid red blood running through the whole thing, signifying both beauty and terror, death of some things and the birth of others. I put so much into this.
Ow.
And really do hope you guys liked it too.
Course.
I thought of everything.
In my next Dinosauria film, however, we leave the cold sea behind and enter the dry Mongolian desert of the late Cretaceous.
It's a pina colada.
A big chunky
Protoceratops.
0.
Thank you all so much for watching. If you'd like to read through the sketchbook I've been showing off in this video,
Yeah,
you
Zira.
absolutely can. Just
I don't
go
get it.
check out my Patreon page.
And I'm pretty sure
Supporting my work there,
after
you'll
that
get
it's
access to
Deinonychus.
exclusive weekly
Mhm.
posts, rentals,
So, bingo.
and updates
Bingo
on my
and
Dinosauria
Zero.
series. Posts just like the ones I'm showing on screen right now. This
E acro.
Whoa.
the best way to keep up to date with the Dinosauria series and directly support it. Super special thanks to all my top Patreon supporters scrolling by on screen right now. I absolutely love making dinosaur stuff, and without all these wonderful people, gigantic projects like my Dinosauria series just would not be possible. So again, thank you.
Anytime, man.
Definitely.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
that was cool.
Give me one
That
second.
was fire.
All right, and that was the making of Monsters Down Under. What do we think?
Enjoyed it.
I
That was
like
really good.
I liked it.
Liked
That was
it.
very nice.
I felt like after seeing this particular behind the scenes, it contextualizes a lot of like the decision making behind the things we see in this short film.
Nice.
Like there's a lot of stuff in here I didn't even think about, like the soundtrack, like having you know, a theme for the Chronosaurus. I didn't really pick up on that. And to that, I had to apologize to Ivan Dutchman. I am so sorry. I'm not very well versed in music, so that kind of went way over my head.
Yeah.
He's still yet to actually upload his making of the soundtrack.
Oh.
Maybe he's waiting for the final one and then he does it.
Well, no, because he's been releasing behind the scenes stuff after the actual short films dropped. But yeah, I felt like, you know, this was like one of the better Dinosauria short films, especially now that there's like some context behind all this.
Yeah.
And I didn't even think about like the whole blood imagery. It probably has a lot more to do it than others. But yeah, like the imagery with like all the blood, like you see death and then also the bringer of life, you know, that sort of thing. I didn't pick up on that. I just thought it was just blood for the sake of blood.
I think a lot of us thought that.
Mm-hmm.
Stupid hat. Yeah, I think this is awesome.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolute cinema.
Absolute cinema.
Yeah.
I just think it's like the perfect like showcase of like art, animation, and music. Like it all just comes together so perfectly. But yeah, I'm honestly looking forward to the next short film, The Fighting Dinosaurs, which I believe is gonna be based on the fossil of the Protoceratops and the Velociraptor, that, you know, that very infamous fossil that was found in Mongolia, which I can't wait to see
Hells yeah. Very exciting.
how he handles it.
I fully trust him. I trust him.
Oh yeah, I do too. This David James Arnsby is a man who never led us astray.
Never.
But yeah, I think that's going to be the end of it for now. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for the next time.
I enjoyed watching this video as we speak. Man, what a great episode. That probably, I see the little meter going up and down. You can't see that, but I see it. But anyways, I'm going to let you guys go. Thank you guys so much for watching. It means so much to me. You took the time out of your day to watch this video. And remember,
Jurassic, if you would.
applesauce and carrot cake and bologna sticks.